Good morning. Today calls for a better compensation scheme for farms hit by avian flu. But let's start with rural housing, where we build, what we build, and the challenges for people who want to work and live in the countryside. We're going to be looking at this all week, from homelessness to affordable homes. Let's start then with the current situation. Martin Collett is Chief Executive at English Rural Housing, which works with communities and councils to build affordable homes in villages. I asked him what the state of rural housing is now.
I would say it's pretty dire, the situation in terms of rural housing, particularly affordable housing in rural communities. There aren't enough of them. There are a lot less of them in rural communities than there are in urban communities. And that problem is getting worse. And it's getting worse because the affordability of homes in rural areas is getting worse. It's getting harder for those working in low or even average incomes. And it's getting worse because we're not building enough of them. And it's getting worse because those that we've got are being lost through policies like Right to Buy and not replaced in those communities as well.
What does that mean for people looking for somewhere to live?
So you get this strange situation where people that are invested in a rural community want to live there, are contributing towards that community. They simply can't afford to live there, so they have to live further afield and quite often reverse commute back to still use that community.
Building houses, though, is contentious, and it's really contentious when you try and do it in rural areas. Last week, in Prime Minister's Questions, the Conservative MP, Wendy Morton, asked Rishi Sunak about this.
In my Aldridge Brownhills constituency, we're at risk of 8,000 new homes being dumped in the constituency. Will my right honourable friend use the opportunity of this Prime Minister's question to reaffirm the government's commitment to protecting the Greenbelt and to adopting a really rigorous brownfield first policy?
Yeah. Well, can I say thank you to my honourable friend for her question? And I can give her that assurance. She's absolutely right. We must protect our Greenbelt, and we are adopting a brownfield first strategy.
That was Rishi Sunak last week. Brownfield first, he says.
And I think that building on brownfield as a preference to solve urban issues is the right approach. It's very challenging to find brownfield in a rural context, so that doesn't mean we shouldn't build in rural areas. What we need to do is to build the right homes in the right places. If you looked across England and you assume there are around perhaps 8,000 villages scattered across England, across the countryside, if each of those villages were to build 6, 8, 12 houses, that's actually quite a lot of houses with quite a low impact on that rural community in terms of taking up space.
The right house in the right place, though, it means different things to different people, doesn't it? And many people would love to live in a new estate on the edge of a village, and some of those estates can be very sizable, and that's actually maybe a sensible way to go about it.
Our preference is to see dispersed development, so that everybody that wants to live in a particular community has the opportunity to do that. A measured, balanced approach where houses are distributed towards the needs of those living in individual communities rather than aggregating them up and saying, OK, we need 1,000 houses, so let's just build 1,000 houses here. That doesn't necessarily mean 1,000 people want to live there. They may want to live in the community where they're invested in. So for us, it's about smaller scale development on a much wider spread.